Okay, this is the verse of today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yasava Yasavatranam Abhisnehas Tat Tat Prapya Subhashubham Navinandati Nadresti Tasya Pragya Pratisthita Ya One Sarvatra everywhere Anabhishninaha without affection Tat that Tat that Prapya receiving Shubha good Ashubha evil Na never Abhinandati praises Na never Dresti enemies Tasya is Pragya perfect knowledge Pratisthita fixed. In the material world, one is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising or nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. There is always some upheaval in the material world, which may be good or may be evil. One who is not agitated by such material upheavals, who is unaffected by good and evil, is to be understood to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one is in the material world, there is always a possibility of good and evil, because this world is full of duality. But one who is fixed in Krishna consciousness is not affected by good and evil, because he is simply concerned with Krishna, who is all good and absolute. Such consciousness in Krishna situates one in perfect transitive position, called technically samadhi. Amayan Grandasya Granjana Shlake Chakshurvitam Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapikamiyam Mudane Swayam Rupa Karmayam Dadati Swaparanakam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srimati Gaura Guru Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare. So as Prabhupada said here, we live in a world of duality, and in the material world, in the material consciousness, people are affected by these dualities. We also, we are young devotees, we are still affected by such dualities. Some things we like, some things we don't like, some people are nice, some people are less nice. And so one is constantly living on a mental platform, unless being in Krishna consciousness, meaning accepting and rejecting. That's the function of the mind. Accept and reject. Things which are less good, we reject. Things which are wonderful, we accept. Somebody says now, you suffer this disease, you don't say very good, very good. One of my godbrothers, Srinanda Swami, he was telling me that at one stage he suffered shingles, extremely painful disease, shingles. And I don't know what it is, but it turns a bell around your belly, and it's highly infectious and it's extremely painful. And so he wrote me, I asked him how is he going, how's it going. about. I think he said, when Krishna loves you, he said, I read somewhere, when Krishna loves you, he puts you on his anvil. You know what an anvil is? The blacksmith has an anvil. It's a metal block formed like this with two horns on the side, and it's very hard metal. The hammer is softer than the anvil, otherwise you will ruin the anvil. So ultimately, after after a year or so, you have to throw the hammer away because it is all deformed. But the anvil stays the same, super hard metal. And so he said that he wrote that I read that when Krishna loves you, he puts you on his anvil and he beats you until the iron has turned into gold. And so he said, maybe Krishna loves me to put me in these circumstances. It's actually the ultimate analysis is true, that Krishna gives us these things simply that we become relieved from material attachment. Prabhupada gives the example of a tiger. A man trains a tiger. First he feeds him profusely. First time he sees the lion, the tiger, he goes there and feeds him profusely. Then he retracts himself. For 1 month the tiger is fasting. He has no idea that this is done by the same person who fed him. He doesn't know that. Then this man comes from behind the curtain and he feeds him profusely. And again he goes away for months. And the tiger doesn't know, same time. So the tiger knows only he is a man who comes at times and feeds me. And he becomes so addicted to the man that he will eat out of his hand. Because you don't bite the hand that feeds you. It's a common saying. So in just the same way Krishna trains us. In just the same way. By the modes of material nature, that we become really attached to Krishna because he puts us in all kinds of distressful positions where we suffer. And then Krishna takes the suffering away, and all of a sudden they all thank you very much, Krishna. Like sometimes if somebody offers us pizza, nobody of us has a problem to accept the pizza. We say, oh, it's Krishna's mercy. Thank you very much. And then sometimes if you're a bad cook, I remember very bad cook in Germany at one time, and this prasadam comes, oh my God. Again, too salty or too spicy, always something. And so, in the same way, Krishna sends us, he sees happiness and distress. Krishna is Sarva Karana Karana, he's the cause of everything, the source of everything, whatever happens, to us at every moment. And it is said that somebody who can see that, who comes to the platform to accept happiness and distress as just two sides of the same coin. He's dispassionate, it's called, Vishpasit. He is a seer. He sees things as they are. The dualities in this material world are simply to relieve us from the attachment to matter. Again, by purification. When a devotee is in distress, he sees actually that Krishna has come to him in the form of distress. One who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me. I'm not lost to him, not given us to me. I saw this in Prabhupada in his last hours. The second last thing he said, I happened to be there by Krishna's mercy. The first thing he said, the second last thing he said was that somebody gave him medicine. What is the medicine? He asks, son, would you please give me medicine? He gave him, and Prabhupada asked him, did you close the bottle? And he said, no, it's not Prabhupada. I forgot. And then Prabhupada started philosophizing about it. He said, you know bottles, you don't know how to close them, you start so many good things. and you don't see the consequences. You see, we are actually tied by scripture, by Guru Shastra Standard. You're not supposed to speculate, you're not supposed to invent things different from what we have been given. And if you do so, you may not see the consequences. And so I've seen in many ways that things are introduced later and turn out to be a complete mistake. Turn out to be a mistake because it's not exactly in line with our teachers. It's pretty simple to understand whether something is right or wrong with the consciousness. We just have to think what Guru Prabhupada said to that. We simply think what we would say. And I know sometimes he would be outraged. And there was even such a simple thing, there was a devotee, Vishnu transfer. And he started, he knew only Hare Krishna, Rama, Rama. Nobody ever heard of Rama. And which is the Bengali. It's understandable because Rama is Bengali. The Sanskrit is Rama. But in Bengali it is Rama, and it turns into O. But Prabhupada, although he was Bengali, never introduced that. He would listen to his tapes. And so when Vishnu Maharaj came back from India, he sang Rama. Prabhupada called him and said, "Who is this Rama? Who is that?" Said, "Well, Prabhupada, I learned in India." So Prabhupada told you that. You know, this is people I do. Your Sanskrit is better than Bengali, you talk about it. And the spirit word Ramosandro, Rama, it's Rama. And so Prabhupada was very particular. He said something, he says something actually very happy. And he said, "You're destroying the Hare Krishna movement." I was quite shocked when I heard that. So I think from Brahmananda. You're destroying the Hare Krishna movement because he wanted us to follow. Mahajana Yidakatai following footsteps. I remember one time he came to what was it, Sydney, and they offered him the Mahaprasad. There was a puri that was blown up, you know, stick his finger right into it and make it pop, you know, Prabhupada. And he said, "Very good, who's the cook here?" And then they called Kurma. And Kurma came and said, "Prabhupada, I'm so pleased that you make the puri exactly like I told you. Like I told you to the devotees. Exactly, not add anything, not to put it with cumin or something. Because the tendency of human beings is always to concoct. It's like a human being in the material world is like a dog's tail. You know, sometimes, you don't see it often, but in Europe there are many dogs, their tail is like this, you know, street dogs. Now if you try to straighten it, for a moment it stays in a lucid perspective. So we are like, our tendencies, like the tendency of the dog's tail, that we deviated already. We live in the manifestation of deviation. We deviated already. That's why how we came into the material world, because of deviation. And so the idea to deviate is very common to us. It's just with how we call it, modus operandi, the way how we work. It's a deviate. It's a very common quality in human beings. And so how do we avoid this? By education from childhood. From childhood. From childhood. People learn from childhood. Once, what was the saying? Was Hänschen nicht lernt Hans nimmer mehr. Little John doesn't learn. The old John will not learn anymore. You know, I give you an example. One time we went to Sankirtan. I was sitting in my bus, and I had to go and so I went out, and it was raining a little bit, and so fast. And then there was some rain, some wet ground. The grass was wet. A meter away, there was like Heads and that's it. This is my young bhakti, he was not initiated, he saw that. So he felt the same necessity, he went out. And then he took whatever he just passed on his body and put it into a seeker. They said, what are you doing? He said, I do what you do. He said, not exactly. You don't do that. And every child was from childhood on. And from childhood on we learn what to do and what not to do in these matters, isn't it? Because nobody, on the whole in the subcontinent, you won't find a person who puts his urine into a seeker. Right? So from childhood. This is how we, the world's a tendency to deviate by learning, by having education from childhood on, particularly Buddha. From childhood, we learn the standard, which is different from our tendency to deviate. It's clear. This is that. You have to do this, you have to do that. And if that childhood education not there, people go berserk. And so the West is really missing out on that. There's no education from childhood on, even on basic matters. See, tendency is to invent and to forget, to make it different. To have it the same is not considered to be very good. It has to be different. So even the simply wonderful, the simply wonderful preparation. It's very simple to make this. What is it? Little powder, powder sugar, milk powder, powder sugar, and butter. That's all. These are the three ingredients. This is how Prabhupada liked it. Somebody gave him this preparation. He had never seen that before. He ate it and said, that's simply, Prabhupada, how do you like it? He said, it's simply wonderful. And so it's called in Iskcon Simply Wonderful. And I remember when I came to the temple in Paris, with my long hair, I came to the temple, and that temple president, he came out and said, I have something for you. He gave me this white ball. And he said, you eat it? He said, whole thing? He said, come on, I popped it in. So it's wonderful. He said, how do you like it? I said, it's simply wonderful. And that's what we call it. Krishna put it into my mouth. That's what we call it. My life in Krishna consciousness is simply wonderful. And it's simply, my whole life must say, it's simply, not always wonderful, but altogether, it's simply wonderful. So Prabhupada liked us to follow. I remember one time, when Prabhupada was in Germany, he recorded this, what is it called? Mantra meditation, Krishna meditation album. Krishna, Kirtan, the album. We had one room set aside. We put all these egg cases, from the egg, where you transport eggs in. It's a piece of cardboard and it's pressed inside holes. And so that's very good for good acoustics. There's no how we call it, resonance. It's perfect for recording. And so Prabhupada was recording, and our Hans Luther, it was at that time, he's an excellent Miranga player. And he recorded it, and Prabhupada stopped him and said, you don't know how to play Miranga? And he said, I know. He said, no, that's not, give me the Miranga, he played. He played the Prabhupada beat to him. Just simply support the Kirtan. Don't become too complicated. And so, you see, Prabhupada was actually very conservative. He used to do everything in a very conservative way, and in a way how he has learned it from his authorities, from spiritual master, etc. And he was concerned, he was delighted when he saw that a devotee would just try to find out how to sing to please Krishna from Prabhupada. Prabhupada was, nobody knows how to sing for Krishna as perfect as Prabhupada does, actually. And so he stopped him and he had him play this simple, what is it, this Prabhupada beat is called? That one. He had to play that. You can see it throughout the album. It was actually the first really nicely produced Vajan album of Srila Prabhupada, who came out of Germany. You can see this speakers here, from the beginning to the end. So the tendency of us is to compare, and we think everything goes. But we should not play or sing or dance or whatever according to our taste or what we think is right. We have to understand what is Krishna like, what is Prabhupada like. We have to evaluate the mentality and the ways of life of great liberated souls like Srila Prabhupada. Because he was so situated, he spoke from a different level. When you read the Bhagavad Gita, the more you read, you realize that this is a person speaking from a completely different level. And therefore we can understand, we just skip things, but in due course of time it becomes clear that everything is very particular, very clear, and you can't touch it, you can't change it. It's very particular. And everything becomes very clear. That how can you be unaffected by the material world, by good and evil, unless you're situated in a different reality, unless you're transcendental. If you're transcendental, it doesn't matter to you, whatever happens. Whatever happens. It may be happiness, maybe the stress of the material, you are not concerned. And we saw this in Prabhupada. There was one situation that this doctor from Calcutta, this Ramanuja doctor, he said to us, the pain Srila Prabhupada is suffering, none of you will be able to support, so to sustain. None of you. He said he has excruciating pain. But he didn't ever mention it. He never made a thing out of it. Because he was actually situated on a different platform. He was not on the bottom platform, he was situated. And even the last thing Srila Prabhupada said was actually following in the line. He said, everything moving and non-moving, there's nothing but Krishna. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. That was the last thing he said. And then Hare Krishna, that's about it. So you see, he's situated in a different platform. But he sees everyone sees me, everyone sees everything in me. I'm never lost to him, nor is he ever lost to me. That even if there's unpleasant situations, like this prophet was situated in Krishna consciousness, well, that's how Krishna makes it. You know, if somebody would come to the movement, Prabhupada would immediately accept him. Because he said, this person is another one has been sent by Krishna. And this person has been sent by Krishna. And this happens by Krishna. I lost my typewriter, it's also done by Krishna. So everything he saw in Krishna consciousness. It was not like us, we choose it. I don't like this guy, this person, that thing. Never. He said, they're all souls, they're all sent by Krishna. They may be imperfect. Prabhupada said, even Iskcon, Prabhupada said, Iskcon, with all your fault, I love you. He said many times, you know, because this is what Krishna gave him. This is what Krishna produced. He said, I love you. And so this is actually the mentality to bind, that by a process of purification, beginning with chanting Holy Name, devotional service, we actually rise to a different platform of understanding and articulation. We can understand things in a higher way than people on the body platform. And we see everything as Krishna. Bahunam Janmanamati, after many, many births, Jnanavamam Prapalati, one who is wise, the other one, Mam Prapalati, he surrendered unto me. Why is he doing that? Vasudeva Saramiti, because there's only Vasudeva, there's nothing but Vasudeva. Vasudeva Saramiti. Samahana Sudura, such a great soul is very rare. The person who sees everything in Krishna, the pleasures of the material world, the happiness of the distress, sometimes there's prasada, sometimes there's no prasada, sometimes this may happen, that may happen, sometimes you're sick. I have a problem with my foot since days, and I hardly walk, painful. And so what is it? Take it, accept it, it's Krishna's mercy. Krishna's mercy. There's a story about it. There was a village, a true story in India. There was a village, it must be the 15th century, and in this village, one day, all the dogs died. Every single dog there running around there, all the street dogs, they died. And so they went to the Guru and said, Guru Maharaj, the Guru was living in a tree house. He said, Guru Maharaj, all the dogs died. What does that mean? He said, what do you mean with that? All the dogs are dead. They died today at 12 o'clock. How can that be? He said, let me think about that. He went into his little house, he was in a tree house. And he went inside, he came out after some time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, he said, actually this is Krishna's mercy. People thought there was not much of an answer, you know. Then next week, same day of the week, all the birds died. The birds fell out of the sky. Whatever birds there was, no birds sang anymore, birds were dead everywhere, and they went to the Guru. He said, Guruji, what happens now? Last week all the dogs died, now all the birds died. How do we process that? And he went into his little house and thought for some time, came on. This is Krishna's mercy. Then in the next week, same week, day, all the fires went out. You know, in the Indian village, nobody has matches. The fire, there's always somebody who has fire. Fire is going on since hundreds of years. And so, there's a catastrophe. There's one, all of a sudden, fire, people cooking chapati, fire went out. Went to the next neighbor, want to get some fire. We have a fire now. And so people panicked. And they went to the Guru and said, Maharaj, what's happened to this village? And he went into his house and said, that is Krishna's mercy. And so people split. Half the people tried to pull him down. He said, he's a cheater. He doesn't know anything. And tried to pull down the Guru from his asana. And the other people said, you can't do that, he's a Guru. You can't do that to the Guru. And so they were fighting and beating each other. And so next week, what happened then? The Muslims came. And the invaders. Invaders came, and they pilfered the villages and killed children and women and raped and whatever, put the house in flames. And they came to this village. And then what happened? The leader, the general or whatever it was, he said, wait a minute, what's going on here? Do you see something? He said, no, we don't see anything. Maharaj, look again. You see something? No. He said, this is a problem. There's no dogs barking, not even birds flying over this village. No fire, nobody's cooking. And this is a trap. And they went away. So they went to the Guru. We got news from all the other villages. They destroyed everything. People died. He said, I told you already. Everything is Krishna's mercy. So that's kind of the situation we have in the material world. You know, sometimes unpleasant, sometimes pleasant. And it says in this verse, but somebody who's silver in Krishna consciousness, he has an equal vision, meaning he sees everything in Krishna. That's the thing. And so a devotee, once somebody is advanced in Krishna consciousness, he can see this, as Krishna has come to be in this particular way. And therefore, even if he has to die, he is set in that. He said, death has to come sooner or later. He's preparing for that. He's not, material world people close their eyes in front of death. They don't want to hear about death. They don't want to hear about the results of karma. They don't want to hear about the hellish planet. It's not a great subject matter among karmis to talk about hell. That you get this for that and that for this. And the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is not the all-favorite canto of materialists. They don't want to hear that. It's like a hunter. The hunter comes and lifts his gun to the rabbit. What does the rabbit do? He closes his eyes. Right? They say. So in the same way, people close their eyes. They don't want to see the inevitable destruction. They don't want to see the inevitable destruction. And it's coming to everybody sooner or later. They don't want to see that. They block it out. They drink and they smoke and all kinds of entertainment, music, etc. Because basically speaking, they don't want to see that they are finished, and they're going to die. They drink, take intoxicants. So the devotee sees this. There's an equal mind. This is Krishna, the happiness, that is Krishna, the disease. This is Krishna, there's nothing but Krishna. This is called Krishna consciousness. Not affected by any kind of things that may be perceived as negative or positive as a matter of fact. Sometimes Krishna gives us pizza, sometimes something less. I remember when we went in Germany, in Hainan, in the very beginning of this movement, so some people were greeting us from the first floor. We came through the street, on both sides of the houses, main street. So some people waved, some people threw rotten tomatoes on us. And we were dancing, rotten tomato, okay, people greeting us. For us it was the same, because we were happy having to hang out, we were ecstatic, we didn't care. And the people threw flowers on rotten tomatoes. It was the same for us, basically speaking. So that's the consciousness that we have to strive for, and we will get into that. The more our spiritual wealth increases, that's what it comes from. If we are poor, we may be materially very rich, but if we are spiritually poor, then we suffer the pangs of material existence. But if we are rich, spiritually rich, then it doesn't matter. But yesterday I gave this example. When if you have to pay a fine, say you have to, I have some other, or you have to, some other to pay a fine of $1,000. If you're a rich man, it doesn't matter to you. If it happens to me, it's a catastrophe. I don't have that kind of money. $1,000 is a lot of money. You see? So it depends on our spiritual wealth. And the process of Krishna consciousness is nothing else but to acquire spiritual wealth by chanting, hearing, etc. That's how we become spiritually fed. We are feeding the soul. And then, if the soul is well fed, then he has happiness and distress is the same, doesn't matter to him, because he's fixed in a higher truth. He's fixed in spiritual consciousness. That's the import of this whole chain of verses we went through. You always see when this happens, that happens, somebody is not affected. Because when your mind has left the forest of illusion, you become indifferent. What has been heard and what has been not heard. You become indifferent. It doesn't matter to you anymore. I mean, what doesn't matter to you that you suffered when you were in kindergarten. That's gone. You lost the connection to that. So in the same way, a person who's cigarette in transcendence, he lost his connection to the material world. He's still there. He's in the world, but he's not of this world. His mind is fixed in spiritual consciousness. And it says here in this verse, it's cigarette in Krishna consciousness, then the material world cannot affect him at all. So I'm not boring you any longer. Thank you very much. And somebody has a question? I give you $1. Thank you very much. The Prabhupada ki jai. Does it make sense to you? Does it make sense to you?
A lot of sense. Very nice. I like it.